Paul, I'm going to basically turn this over to you, but you, through your company SmarterX.ai, have built a ChatGPT powered tool called JobsGPT. And this is a tool that is designed to assess the impact of AI, specifically large language models, on jobs and the future of work. So basically, you can use this tool. We both used it a bunch to assess how AI is going to impact knowledge workers by breaking your job into a series of tasks and then starting to label those tasks based on perhaps the ability of an LLM to perform that for you. So, really, the whole goal here is whether it's your job, other people's jobs within your company, or in other industries, you can use Jobs GPT to actually unpack okay, how do I actually start transforming my work using artificial intelligence? What levels of exposure does my work have to possible AI disruption? So, Paul, I wanted to turn it over to you and just kind of get a sense of why did you create this tool? Why now? Why is this important?
Yeah, so this is going to be a little bit behind the scenes. This isn't like a highly orchestrated launch of a tool. This is um, something I've basically been working on for a couple months. And over the weekend, I was messaging Mike and saying, "Hey," or I think Friday, I messaged Mike said, "Hey, I think we're going to launch this thing like next week. We'll just talk about it on the podcast and put it out into the world." And I think part of this is the SmarterX company, you mentioned. So we announced SmarterX, it's just SmarterX.ai is the URL, um, in June. And the premise here is I've been working on this for a couple of years. This company, it's an AI research and consulting firm, but heavy focus on the research side. And the way I envision the future of research firms is much more real time research, not spending 6 months, 12 months working on a report that's outdated the minute it comes out because the
Mm,
models have changed since you did the research. I envision our research firm being much more real time and honestly, where a lot of the research is going to be things we dive deep on and then Mike and I talk about on podcast episodes. And so I would say that this is probably Jobs GPT is sort of our first public facing research initiative that I've
mhm.
chosen just to put out into the world to start accelerating like the conversation around this stuff. So it is not available in the GPT store. It's a beta release. So if you want to go play with it, you can do it while we're talking about this and follow along. Just go to smarterx.ai and click on tools, and it's right there. Now the reason we're doing it that way is because I may iterate on versions of this pretty rapidly, and so we're just going to keep updating it, and then the link from our SmarterX site will be linking to the most current version of it. So why was this built? I'm going to talk a little bit about the origin of the idea, a little bit about how I did it, and then back to why it matters, I think, and
Mm,
why people should be experimenting with stuff like this. So you highlighted two main things, Mike. So we talk to companies all the time on the as episode 105, we talked about like the lack of adoption and education and training around these AI platforms, specifically large language models. We're turning employees loose with these platforms and not teaching them how to use them, not teaching them how to prioritize use cases and identify the things that are going to save them time or make the greatest impact. And then at the higher level, this idea that we need to be assessing the future of work and the future of jobs by trying to project out 1 to 2 models from now. What are these things going to be capable of that maybe they're not capable of today? That's going to affect the workforce
mm.
and jobs and job loss and disruption. So when I set out to build this, I had those two main things in mind: prioritize AI use cases, like hold people's hand, help them find the things where AI can create value in their specific role, and then help leaders prepare for the future of work. So how it kind of came to be though. So I've shared before, since early last year when I do my keynotes, I often end for like leadership audiences with 5 steps to scaling AI. Those became the foundation for our Scaling AI course series. Those 5 steps, as a quick recap, are education and training. So build an AI academy, step one. Build AI council, step two. Step three is Gen AI policies, responsible AI principles. Step four, and this is what we're going to come back to, AI impact assessments. Step five, AI roadmap. Now, the AI impact assessments, when I was creating that course for Scaling AI, course 8, I was creating this at the end of May, early June of this year. I wanted to find a way to assess the impact today, but to forecast the impact tomorrow.
Mm.
And since we don't know really what these models are going to be capable of, I wanted to build a way to try and project this. So the way I did this is I went back to the August 2023 paper, GPTs are GPTs, an early look at the labor market impact potential of large language models. So what that means is generative pre-trained transformers, the basis for these language models, are general, oh, I just lost purpose technologies. So GPTs are GPTs. That paper says, and I quote, August 2023, OpenAI research paper investigates the potential implications of large language models, such as generative pre-trained transformers, on the US labor market, focusing on increasing capabilities arising from LLM powered software compared to LLMs on their own. So they're trying to look at when we take the basis of this large language model and then we enhance it with other software, what does it become capable of and how disruptive is that to the workforce? Um, Using a new rubric, we assess occupations based on their alignment with LLM capabilities. And then they used human expertise and GPT classifications. Their finding revealed that around 80% of the US workforce would have at least 10% of their work tasks affected by the introduction of large language models, while approximately 19% of workers may see at least 50% of their tasks impacted. We do not make predictions about the development or adoption timelines of such LLMs. The projected effects span all wage levels and higher income jobs potentially facing greater exposure to LLM capabilities and LLM powered software. They then go into kind of how they did this, where they take the ONET database, which I talked about on the show before. But if you go to ONET, it has like 900 occupations in there, and
Mhm.
it'll actually give you the tasks associated with those occupations. So you can kind of like train the model on these tasks. Um, their findings consistently show across both human and GPT-4 annotations that most occupations exhibit some degree of exposure to large language models. Occupations with higher wages generally present with higher exposure. Um, so basically, what they did is they took um, two levels of exposure. So there was no exposure, meaning the large language model isn't going to impact the job. So very little exposure. And then they took direct exposure. So if using a chat GPT, like a large language model, chat GPT, that it could affect the job, that it would be able to do it at like a human level, and it would affect the that job within the workforce. And then they took another exposure level they called level two and said, if we took the language model and we gave it software capabilities, how much impact would it then have? So when I was creating the scaling AI course and trying to explain to people how to do these AI impact assessments, I adapted a version of that exposure level and I took it out to zero to E0 to E6, where it added image capability, vision capability, audio, and reasoning.
Mm.
So I ran an experiment. I created this prompt in the course and I put it into Gemini and ChatGPT, and I was kind of shocked by the output because it assessed jobs with me not telling it what the job did. I could just say like marketing manager, and it would build out the tasks based on its training data of what marketing managers do. And then it would assess it based on exposure levels of those tasks and how much time could be saved by using a large language model with these different capabilities. So after I finished recording those courses and released those in June, I couldn't shake the idea of like we needed to do more with this, that
Mm.
this early effort was like really valuable. And so for the last month and a half or so, I've been working on a custom GPT, which is the Jobs GPT that we're kind of releasing today. Um, but the key was to expand that exposure key, like the exposure levels. And so the way I designed this prompt, so the system prompt for this thing is about 8,000 characters, but the gist of it is that it doesn't just look at what an AI model can do to your job today, whether you're an accountant, a lawyer, a CEO, a marketing manager, a podcast host, whatever you do. It's looking at your job, breaking it into a series of tasks, and then projecting out the impact of these models as the models get smarter and more generally capable. So those are the exposure levels. So I'll kind of give you the breakdown of the exposure key here. And again, you can go play with this yourself. And as you do an output, it'll tell you what the exposure key is. So it'll kind of remind you. So the first is no exposure. The LLM cannot reduce the time for this task, typically requires high human interaction. Exposure one, direct exposure. The LLM can reduce the time required. Two, exposure level two is additional software is added. So, such as software like a CRM database. and it's able to write real time summaries about customers and prospects. E3 is it has image capabilities. So the language model plus the ability to view, understand, caption, create, and edit images. E4 is video capabilities. So it now has the ability to view, understand, caption, create, and edit videos. 5 is audio capabilities, which we talked about with GPT-4 voice mode. Um, so the ability to hear, understand, transcribe, translate, output audio, and have natural conversations through devices. E6, which is where the strawberry stuff comes in. So now I'll kind of connect the dots here for people as to why this is so critical. We're thinking about this. E6 is exposure given advanced reasoning capabilities. So the large language model plus the ability to handle complex queries, solve multi step problems, make more accurate predictions, understand deeper contextual meaning, compete higher level cognitive tasks, draw conclusions, and make decisions. E7, which we're going to talk about a little later on, exposure given persuasion capabilities. The LLM plus the ability to convince someone to change their beliefs, attitudes, intentions, motivations, or behaviors. E8, something we've talked about a lot on this one, AI agents on this show, exposure given digital world action capabilities. So the large language model we have today, plus AI agents with the ability to interact with, manipulate, and perform tasks in digital environments, just as a human would using an interface such as a keyboard and mouse or touch or voice on a smartphone. E9, exposure given physical world vision capabilities. This is like Project Astra from Google DeepMind. So we know labs are building these things.
Mm,
No economist I know of is projecting impact on workforce based on these things.
hmm,
So E9 is large language model plus a physical device such as phones or glasses that enable the system to see, understand, analyze, and respond to the physical world. And then E10, which we'll talk about an example in a couple minutes, is exposure given physical world abilities like humanoid robots, the LLM embodied in a general purpose bipedal autonomous humanoid robot that enables the system to see, understand, analyze, respond to, and take action in the physical world. So these exposure levels are critical. And
mm,
and, and I know we're like giving some extended time on this podcast to this, but it is extremely important you understand these exposure levels. Like go back and re-listen to those. Go to the landing page on SmarterX and read them. We cannot plan our businesses or our careers or our next steps as a government based on today's capabilities. This is the number one flaw I see from businesses and from economists. They are making plans based on today's capabilities.
mm,
This is why we shared the AI timeline in episode 87 of the podcast, where we were trying to like see around the corner a little bit. We have to try and look 12 to 18 to 24 months out. We know all the AI labs are working on the things I just explained. This is what business leaders, economists, education leaders, government leaders all need to be doing. We have to be trying to project out the impact. So this jobs GPT is designed to do that. You literally just go in, give it your job title, and it'll spit out a chart with all this analysis. So it's taken a lot of trial and error, lots of internal testing. I had Mike help me with some of the testing over the last couple of weeks. But the beauty of this is like up until November 2023, when OpenAI released GPTs, custom GPTs, I couldn't have built this. Like I've built tools in my past life at my age when I owned my agency using developers and
mm,
hundreds of thousands of dollars and having to find data sources. I didn't have to do any of that. I envisioned a prompt based on an exposure level I created with my own knowledge and experience. And then I just played around with custom GPT instructions until I got the output I wanted. I have zero coding ability. This is purely taking knowledge and being able to build a tool that hopefully helps people.
mhm,
So I'll kind of wrap here with like a little bit about the tool itself. So it is ChatGPT powered, so it'll hallucinate, it'll make stuff up. Um, but as you highlighted, Mike, the goal is to assess the impact of AI by breaking jobs into tasks and then labeling those tasks based on these exposure levels. So it's about an 8,000 character prompt, which is the limit, by the way, in custom GPTs. The prompt is tailored to the current capabilities of today's leading AI frontier models and projecting the future impact. So the way I do that is here is an excerpt of the prompt. So this is literally the instructions. And this is on the landing page, by the way, if you want to read them. Consider a powerful large language model such as GPT-4o, Claude 3.5, Gemini 1.5, and Llama 3.1 405B. This model can complete many tasks that can be formulated as having text and image input and output, where the context for the input can be measured or captured in 128,000 tokens. The model can draw on facts from its training data, which stops at October 2023, which is actually the cutoff for GPT-4o. Access the web for real time information, and apply user submitted examples and content, including text files, images, and spreadsheets. Again, this is my instructions to the GPT. Assume you're a knowledge worker with an average level of expertise. Your job is a collection of tasks. This is a really important part of the prompt. You have access to the LLM as well as any other existing software and computer hardware tools mentioned in the tasks. You also have access to any commonly available technical tools accessible via a laptop, such as a microphone and speakers. You do not have access to any other physical tools. Now, part of that prompt is based on the GPT's or GPT system prompt. So that's actually kind of where the origin
Mm,
of the inspiration for that prompt came from. And then the GPT itself has 3 conversation starters. Enter a job title to assess. You can literally just put in whatever your job title is, and it'll immediately break it into tasks and give you the chart. You can provide your job description. So this is something Mike and I teach in our applied AI workshops. Literally just upload your job description, copy and paste the 20 things you're responsible for, and it'll assess those. Or you can say, just show me an example assessment. It then outputs it based on task, exposure level, estimated time saved, and the rationale, which is the magic of it. Like the fact how it assesses the estimated time it's giving you is remarkable. Um, so it's powered by ChatGPT, as I said. It's capable of doing beyond the initial assessment. Think of it as a planning assistant here. You can have a conversation with it. You can push it to help you turn your chat into actual plan. Where I have found it excels is in the follow up prompts. So I
mm,
gave those on the landing page where you say break it into subtasks is a magical one. Help me prioritize the tasks. It'll actually go through and use reasoning to apply like how you should prioritize them. You can ask it to explain how a task will be impacted and give it a specific one. You can say, ask it, how are you prioritizing these tasks? Like, how are you doing this? You can say more tasks. You can say, give me more reasoning tasks, like whatever you want. Just um, have a conversation with it and play around with it. And then the last thing I'll say here is this importance of this average skilled human. So when I built this, I considered, should I try and build this to future proof based on this thing becoming superhuman, or like how should I do it? So I
mm,
chose to keep it at the average skilled human, which is where most of the AI is today. So if we go back to episode 72 of the podcast, we talked about the levels of AGI paper from DeepMind, and their paper outlines like level 2 being competent, at least 50 percentile of skilled adults. I built the prompt and the jobs GPT to assume that is the level. Um, Getting into expert and virtuoso and superhuman, the other levels of AGI from DeepMind, I just didn't mess with at this point. So we're going to focus on, is it as good or better than an average skilled human? And is it going to do the task faster, better than that average skilled human? So I'll kind of stop there and just say we have the opportunity to reimagine AI in its use in our companies and its use in our careers, and we have to take a responsible approach to this. And so the only way to do that is to be proactive in assessing the impact of AI on jobs. And so my hope is that by putting this GPT out there into the world, people can start accelerating their own experimentations here, start really figuring out ways to apply it. So again, whether you are an accountant, an HR professional, a customer service rep, a sales leader, like whatever you do, it will work for that job.
mm.
And the beauty is, I didn't have to give it any of the data. It's all in its pre-training data. Or you can go get it your own and like give it, specific job descriptions. Um, so it's just to me, it's like kind of a amazing thing that someone like me with no coding ability can build something that I've
Mm,
already found immense value in, and I'm
right.
hoping it helps other people too. And again, it's a totally free tool. It's available to anyone with the link. It is not in the GPT store. We'll probably drop it into the GPT store after some further testing from the community.